judgment surrounding me. I sit and ponder, question and wonder who from my past has been haunting me. Try to open my eyes, but I keep seeing two of me. Type and delete all my feelings on Reddit. It's 5 in the morning and
Alright, there are some topics that have been bubbling away in my head for a bit. I suppose this should be an omnibus, or yeah, I suppose F1 omnibus, I'll go with that. So, number one, Vries. Vries is set to play the role of the Panacea for F1 2022, because it's been a bit of a torrid season, really. I mean, Ferrari didn't put up anything close to the fight they should have put up. Neither did Perez. Although Perez is performing to spec as far as I'm concerned, he's experiencing the Bottas syndrome, I suppose, where everyone would always hype up Bottas actually putting up a fight versus Sir Lewis Hamilton, right? Anyway, so that's happening at Red Bull. Ferrari are the mess that they are, and yeah, Mercedes are are in no man's land for most of the season. They're a little bit closer now, but they're still functionally in no man's land on raw performance. The drivers are just what they are. So it's been quite a stale season, especially in comparison to last season. The racing has been good. In terms of what the racing could end up looking like, it's been very promising in that regard. But otherwise, as far as competition goes, it's been a pretty drab season. So F1 needed a story, of course, right? We need a story to keep us going. Otherwise, this Verstappen parade, it can get a bit jading, a bit tiring. Not only for the Sir Lewis Hamilton fans, but even for the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi. They were kicking up a fuss. But many men kicking up a fuss. So many fusses being kicked up as to how 2022 Formula One has gone. And so De Vries, with his timely debut, he's kind of been a panacea for F1. It's like, oh look, there's these young hotshots all over the place. Any of them could be just as good or better than. Name your favorite here. and just like that, well, everyone's looking forward towards the future. Has De Vries actually been the panacea for F1 2022 just yet? No. I suppose if he does get a run out in Singapore, actually get to race in Singapore, I'm not going to say it's looking likely or unlikely one way or the other, but with Albon's complications during surgery, he had respiratory failure, if you're curious. I'm not entirely sure what his recovery time looks like. There are rumblings about that he is going to miss Singapore, so De Vries may just get another appearance at Singapore, and well, if he does something miraculous in qualifying on a circuit that's hard to overtake, well, then it's anyone's guess as to what might happen from there. Otherwise, if good things do happen, then he will have been the panacea for this 2022 season, especially coming off of last season. And yeah, people will actually, I suppose, many sects of fandoms will be keen to move forward and see what the future holds. I'm not going to say which ones, I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure seeing that, there are challenges to the crown, because people have, like I said in the observations, the Italian GP observations, people have gotten a little blown away with hyping up Maximilian Verstappen, like saying he's going to get 7 or what have you. Like, okay, Helmut Marko, he's doing the opposite. He's saying he might retire during current contract. But anyway, that's for a whole separate occasion. De Vries, best of luck to him, like I said before. And if he does get to actually race in Singapore, Well, I'm looking forward to seeing just what exactly he can do. Hard decisions need to be made at Mercedes. What decisions, you might ask? Well, none relating to their driver lineup. But certainly, their W13 concept, that's going to need to be looked at. If they being Mercedes, and their brain trust actually believe in the efficacy of this concept. This, what is it? The zero pods concept. Taken to calling it the slim pods. It's got all sorts of names. The zero pod concept. If they believe in its efficacy and they actually stick through with it going into 2023, well, I would assume it's going to produce results starting at Bahrain. Well, does the 2023 season start at Bahrain? Well, wherever the 2023 season starts, I'm assuming it's Bahrain. I'm sure they'll have that in ink somewhere, and they took that right from Australia. Wherever 2023 starts, whichever. Well, if Mercedes stick with the zero pod concept, well, we're gonna have to expect instant results. The reason they have a hard decision to make right now is because the only other team, Williams, who were trying a slim side pod concept, they ditched it. And, well, aside from Latifi and whatever flaws he has as a driver, the cars look really promising since ditching the slim side pod. So Mercedes, they have to look at that. They could be wasting a whole lot of energy trying to make the slim pod, zero pod work, and it could just not be worth it at the end of the day. And they might actually force themselves into a development cul-de-sac where it's a cul-de-sac, right? There is no going forward, you can only go backwards from here. So and Ferrari likewise, pending what the efficacy of their concept is, although it does look more promising than the Mercedes concept, but they might have to make the same decisions regarding how fruity they want to get with the bodywork. So just for reliability's sake for them. Yeah, very hard decisions to be made at Mercedes. They might even consider replacing some technical personnel because whoever greenlit the zero pods might find themselves coming under employer review. So yeah, very hard decisions to be made at Mercedes. Likewise, they might want to start looking for a Toto Wolff replacement because, well, Toto, he's got his own ambitions and they're not exactly tied to Mercedes. Otherwise, he's professional. He'll make the correct moves for Mercedes F1 team. Some might wonder, should they make a decision regarding the number one, number two driver thing? Look, Mercedes is equal opportunity. There is no working around that, right? I said in a comment, I said to the brother, like, this is an equal opportunity team. Like, he's got to race it like he's racing against Nico Rosberg. Really, there is no two ways about it, right? Race it like you're racing against Maximilian and he got a hold of a Mercedes contract. Race it the same, because George, once the development stuff is out of the way, right, and now Mercedes are mostly just focusing on getting ready for weekends, kind of conventionally, though not fully conventionally. But now that they've switched to that, George, he's racing it very seriously. So Lewis Hamilton, I don't know what exactly he is expecting from George, because George is not going to. George, you see, here's the thing with George. George is driving for his future in the sport. That, forget about his future at Mercedes, although he's also driving for that. Ergo, any opportunity there is to beat the great Sir Lewis Hamilton, it's gonna be taken. Right? There's no real two ways about it. The lad has to take the opportunity. Right, so Lewis Hamilton, he might expect some favors from Mercedes this way or that way. He might get some favors from Mercedes this way or that way. Right? He was actually, Mercedes were running the race with the main objective of him getting a race win at Zandvoort before what happened. Right? I'm not gonna get into that again. Don't want people telling me I gotta get MRIs and shit. By the way, I've not had any success booking my MRI scan. Mercedes were doing the thing for Sir Lewis Hamilton. Things metastasized the way they did, and George Russell opted into racing for his own strategy, which was the correct call. That was the correct call at that point. However you want to slice it, that was the correct call. But otherwise, the point being made, I guess, is that George, he's not a wingman, right? Bottas, he was a wingman. Rosberg was not a wingman. You see, Bottas is the outlier in terms of what Mercedes have done with their driver lineups. Of course, there's been a short time that Mercedes have been around, but this is what they've done with their driver lineups. You got to have 2 world championship potentials there. Schumacher, Rosberg, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Now gorgeous Russell, he's got champions potential. Will he, won't he? Who knows? Bottas, what people were seeing during the Bottas years, Bottas and Sir Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes partnership, that's not the norm. Alright, that is not the norm at all. If it were the norm, then Bottas would have convincingly challenged for championships, or even gotten a championship of his own. That would have been the norm. Or even given Mercedes an opportunity to engineer him a championship anyway. So yeah, George, I'm seeing a lot of people still trying to conceptualize George Russell as a wingman. He's absolutely not a wingman. So Lewis Hamilton might be trying to conceptualize him as a wingman to him too. He's not a wingman. Right? He's not Bottas. Bottas is the plan B. Right? I wouldn't even say Bottas is the wingman. He's not the wingman. But he's the plan B. Ideally for Mercedes. George Russell, he's plan A1. Right? So Lewis Hamilton, plan A. George Russell, plan A1. And that's the same spec that it was with Nico Rosberg and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and the same spec with Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg. It's probably the same spec it was with Fangio and Sterling Moss and whoever else Mercedes had contracted to their outfit before the Le Mans disaster. But otherwise, the drivers is not a decision that Mercedes have to make. They have to make decisions regarding their car and perhaps some key personnel, because the car, there's so many side issues to this car that just aren't even considered. So do Mercedes even have the same floor depth to work with that other teams have, right? Because they have to package their car into the space that they have. Now, of course, there's a lot of chatter in the engineering circles, the nerds, that it's not all that big a difference, but there is a difference. All right, it doesn't have to be a big difference, but there is a difference in packaging. And of course, now, do you have the same floor depth that Red Bull have or Ferrari have with the internals packaged so tightly? Probably not. And likewise, they're probably limited on car dimensions that they can explore, either making the car longer or wider, just because of the zero pod concept that they're going with. So this thing has a whole cascading effect, just like with the Aero, where it's got positive, right? It's got positive feedback loops. In other areas of key development, it's got a few negative feedback loops. And, well, this isn't considered in any discussions that I've seen anyway. It seems to be an afterthought. Oh, look, the floor is so wide. They've got to, have all the same trimmings as the others. And it could just as well not be the case. I can't get the floors in front of me and measure for myself, but it could just as well not be the case. So, as far as I'm concerned, there are more engineering decisions for Mercedes to make than anything. And, well, they better have made them already, quite frankly. Because it looks like they're going to finish second in the Constructors' Chat, heavens forbid. Alright, I really hope Ferrari just nab second in the Constructors and Mercedes can enjoy third place money. But otherwise, my own bias talking there. Otherwise, I suppose that is something that is now open to everyone. You can sandbag just to get more money for the next season. But anyway, that's for a whole nother video. Does Binotto keep his job? It seems a very direct question to me. And really, I'd have to know what Ferrari are seeing in the back rooms, as it were. Well, they're back rooms to me, but in their rooms, as it were. I'd have to know what exactly they're seeing over there. Because on pure optics generated over the season, Binotto simply cannot keep his job. Like, that, it would be a madness to me. What was it? Was it De Montezemolo? Did he get fired for less? He actually put out, I suppose, it was illegal fuel flow situation, but otherwise, that was Binotto's engine program, so it's a bit bizarre to me. If Binotto is so, like I've said before, if Binotto is so valuable to the engine program, move him back to the engine program. I can't see how him being team principal and all these goofy situations occurring around Ferrari are just not linked. Even right now, is having lost trust with Charlie Leclerc. They're asking him a question over. It's a madness. The optics are all over the place. This can't fly. And who's this? The Ferrari chairman? I didn't catch Homeboy's name. I think it was Andrew something. Surprisingly, he's an Andrew. I didn't catch Homeboy's name. But he was present at Monza. Was he impressed? Was he unimpressed? Did he feel the program was lacking? Who knows? Who knows? Only he will know, and I suppose he might have aired his thoughts to Binotto. Might have aired his thoughts to the media off the record, because suddenly the media started chiming up. These Mockingbirds started chiming in with, "Whoa, he might get fired." So here's what I'll say: if this Ferrari project, with this, this concept that they've made it out, if this is worth sticking by, then it's probably worth sticking by Binotto, because I could see a new team principal coming in and opting into a whole new spec of car. So if this thing is worth sticking by, then it's worth sticking by Binotto. If it's not worth sticking by the car, then you probably gotta move Binotto either back to the engine department solely. I suppose he still has his hands on the engine department right now, but you would move him back there exclusively and get someone else into the team principal role, or who knows, maybe they even fire him and go with a new engine guy. Because like I said, Binotto, he was present for the fuel flow situation. so yeah. Both these major manufacturers got a whole lot of hard decisions to make, and they better make them quick. Alright, Stefano Domenicalli has made some waves by saying it's 5 or more years for another female driver to make the F1 grid. I think he's been very highball with the 5 years. I mean, that's a very highball estimate to me, especially if the W Series, just if it remains a thing, if it becomes a thing, and that's where the women go to get racing opportunities. If that remains a thing, then the 5 years seems a lot more optimistic to me than Domenicalli should perhaps be airing. I mean, you're looking at 10 years, maybe more. This would be a quicker thing if we were looking to get women into Formula 2, right? Then it would really be a quicker thing. I believe the W Series cars are slower than Formula 3 cars. I might be wrong on that, but they're definitely slower than Formula 2 cars. It would be much more beneficial to everyone if Jamie Chadwick was in Formula 2 instead of Tatiana Calderon, right? I shouldn't have to say that out loud, but I probably have to say that out loud. Instead, what we have is Tatiana Calderon in F2, and she's undercooked and quite frankly not good enough. And in my head, it would be far better. It would be far better a prospect or proposition to have an all-female team in Formula 2, even if it's a vanity project, like have an all-female team in Formula 2, all-female drivers, and if they're good enough in Formula 2, you're gonna invariably get handed a contract offer to go to F1. It's gonna happen at some point, right? But the W Series, there's, it's like, how guys try to scout their own academies for their football clubs, right? So you try to scout the under 23 games. Oh, look, this player's really good. You try to scout the under 18s. Oh, this lad's gonna be a superstar in a few years' time, and it never pans out because it's such a far away removed level from Premier League football that there's no comparison to be made. It's the same thing with the W Series versus Formula 3 and Formula 2. And Formula 1, right? It's the same thing. So, as far as I can see, right, it would be far better to have an all-female team in Formula 2, maybe even have an all-female team in Formula 1 if such a vanity project could be afforded. I don't think it could be. That's expensive, right? like that's expensive, but it's something that could probably fund itself with the type of sponsors it could make, assuming you actually get good drivers in. Like, for me, the women were closer to getting into Formula 1 when Vanina X was racing in WEC. Right? I don't know if she's still racing in WEC, but, you're closer to getting in Formula 1 when that was going on than when this W Series has now kicked off. And sure, perhaps Jamie Chadwick would not have gotten the sponsorships or the plugs to find a Formula 2 seat like Tatiana Calderon, right? It's just as likely. And that's a whole different situation that needs to be looked at. But it's just as likely that could have happened to Jamie Chadwick if there was no W Series for her to go to. Right? Oh, suddenly there's no W Series for Jamie Chadwick to go to. She's trying to get into F2. No one's really taken the bite. The last bite of the cherry, Tatiana Calderon, she's kind of stinking up the place and it's just unconvincing. Why bank on this Jamie Chadwick lady? Why would she be different, right? So these are the things that run through the team principals heads in Formula 2 and all these junior Formula, likewise the Formula 1. But yeah, whichever lady next makes the F1 grid, she won't be the first. Yeah, she won't be the first. This happened before. It will probably happen again in future. Although, who knows, one really does wonder what the cars are actually like when driven over an entire race distance, right? Because Tatiana Calderon, she had a test, what was it, in that 2014 spec of car, I believe. And she was trying to boast that it was totally easy to drive. Maybe that spec of car, that might have been easier, I suppose. Very well might have been. But yeah, that probably doesn't hold the same for current cars, and well, there's questions to be asked there. I mean, seeing will be believing at the end of the day, so it is what it is. We'll see. We got to get a lady in first. But of course, the key problem with that, like I've pointed out, is that the W Series is probably going to be a hindrance to that instead of actually being an aid to that. Alright, it has become apparent that the fan experience of 2022, the track going fan experience of 2022, probably needs to be talked about. Well, as I said in the observations, that there was very little specs of orange. The Orange Army wasn't present, and there's reasons for that. Because it might have been a bit of a war zone in the Monza fan camps if the Orange Army was present, or if they were brazen about wearing their colors. Or, I mean, it might have been the reverse. Maybe they were acting up. They're trying to stealth it up in the red, in the Ferrari colors, and you get to conversing at the fan camps, and all of a sudden the true, the true colors come out. Who knows? Who knows? All right, I think everyone's just acting out right now because, well, they got to act out, so we're gonna act out too. But this very well could have been happening all these years prior, and it just went unreported, and it's just flavorful to report it now. 2022 has been rife with, well, questionable fan experiences, sometimes violence, and, well, some other crass behavior has gone down for track-going fans, particularly at the Spanish, Austrian, and Hungarian Grand Prix. Well, what a motley mix of countries that is. What a motley mix of countries this is. Now, from what I'm understanding at this Italian situation is that the Orange Army has clashed with the Tifosi now. This is just the way that the FIA has willed it to be, quite frankly, with their handling of 2021. And you think I'm talking about just Abu Dhabi, quite frankly, the whole season, with their handling of the whole season, right? This is the result, right? There's now fan division. There's, we're not fans of Formula One now. We're fans of team and driver. It is quite essentially Football One, and this is what happens, right? This is the end result of that. Now, this is not quite the end. The end might be a whiles away, and some more wild shit's gonna happen. But yeah, this is the result of that. You get in, you start getting friendly with the wrong crowd in the fan camps, and you say you're the fan of the wrong driver or the wrong team. Shit might get lit. Your shit might get lit. Who knows? Who knows? The F1 has become that type of world now. Right? After all the mad standards of racing that they let pass for last season, and on account of them letting them pass, you had the Orange Army getting the alacrity to suddenly start running their mouths as to what is and isn't good racing. And if you go to an F1 race and you're just a fan of F1, you're probably the outlier. All right, whose colors you wearing? It's a serious consideration when you go there. They're lucky that Alpine they're lucky it's not a battle between Alpine and Ferrari for the championship, I tell you what. But anyway, how do you fix this situation from here? I'm not entirely sure. I don't actually think it's all that possible to police the fan camps if you don't have the fans on board with self-policing. Right? There's just too many people. So F1 has, dug this themselves. The Americans, they came in, they added their spice and flavor to it, and well, they did what they did, and throughout 2021 and for the season finale, and this is where we are at now. All right. So Alonso, he's done his brown envelope stunts. I shouldn't say Alonso. Alonso's team. All right. I'll get in trouble for saying it's Alonso. It's at some point, undoubtedly. But Alonso's team at the time, not his current team. Who knows? He might have replaced him. But Alonso's team at the time, 07, they handed out brown envelopes filled with cash. 1,500 Great British pounds. Do you know how much money that is? That's like, wow. How much? How can I quantify? You can get a PC in South Africa for each envelope, a pretty nice PC, right? A solid PC. Stack two of them, you might get a state-of-the-art one. Now what's Alonso done? He's bribed the McLaren mechanics to put a little more shine on his car. Okay, now, is there a problem with it? No. You can do that. There's a problem philosophically with doing that at McLaren, which is why Ron Dennis, well, at least the McLaren run by Ron Dennis, right? I can't talk about new age McLaren. But a McLaren run by Ron Dennis, that was philosophically problematic. And so he made those mechanics give that shit to charity, okay? That shit went to charity, allegedly. Right? I ain't gonna say one way or the other, but that shit went to charity. So now what does this mean for Alonso? Well, this probably means that Alonso has done this at more teams than just McLaren. Right? He had to do it against Das Rookie. You know, it's Rookie Hamilton. Right? He had to do it against him. He had to have his team do it again. He had to have his team do it against him. So he's undoubtedly had to have the same thing happen at Ferrari. Ferrari might have turned a blind eye to it. Right, it's free money for the mechanics, right? You know, there's different ways to take it. Like, oh, sure, they can, you know, some extra lunch money for the kids and what have you. Maybe, you know, maybe you get some construction project over the line. You get some parts for that. Who knows? Some hobby project or something. Who knows, right? There's a lot of things you could do with with this type of money. But yeah, it's safe to assume he probably did the same thing at Ferrari. Probably did the same thing at Renault. And who knows, he might be doing the same thing right now. Or his team might be doing the same thing. I'll be correct on that. But his team might very well be doing the same thing right now. They was just called out at McLaren because Ron Dennis, he had standards, he had principles. Right, it might not be called out everywhere. Some places they might just let it be. Like, okay, Alonso gave you some cash, alright. Alright, they might make him give the whole garage cash and he might just do so. Right, at some point, like, you know, you won Le Mans and all of this, you probably got too much money. You probably got more money than you know how to spend, right? So at that point, yeah, sure, I'll give the whole garage. The brown envelopes, it's all Gucci by me. You might just do that. You know, it might be petty cash at some point, especially with whatever sponsorships you can get from Spain, right? It might be petty cash. But yeah, Alonso, he's that guy. He'll try to buy the garage away from you. It's just, which is so mad, right? That's so insane to consider. And there's Crashgate. And then people wonder why this guy just never got lucky after the fact. Well, he was probably doing a whole lot of mess after the fact. This was just surprising in the fact that it actually happened. I'm otherwise not surprised that it's Alonso's name tied to it. And I'm also kind of not surprised that it's Mark Priestley. Mark Priestley's name tied to it. Anyway, a most interesting piece of news and a very enlightening piece of news. Right, especially on Alonso, a most enlightening piece of news. We already had a lot of details on Alonso. He is still a complete driver. You see, I can't take away from the guy's skill behind the wheel just because of this, but his character is definitely taking another hard dent. It is what it is. You know, Alonso, he's chiseled this way now. It's not a problem for him. So this is news to us, and to Alonso, it's like, what? Y'all just found out? Damn, bro. Like, you know, let me enjoy my Tuesday or some shit. It might just be that way for him, but anyway. All right, the driver market is in a spin. Right, no one's touching the driver market because there's no you know, someone reports, oh, Gasly has signed with Alpine one day, and the very next day, you know, at the Grand Prix, you know, it's free practice going on right now, and you're expecting commentary to talk about, you know, Gasly is going to Alpine, and suddenly they're talking about Jack Doohan going to Alpine. So the driver market's all over the place right now. Silly season is in full effect, and it's best to pick through the pieces at some point. So one, De Vries could land anywhere. He could land anywhere. There's no telling where he'll land. Right? He could land at Haas. He could land at Alfa Romeo. He could land at AlphaTauri. He could land at Alpine. He could land at Williams. Anyway. You know, Daddy Stroll might kick Lance Stroll out the situation. He might land at Aston Martin, Racing Martin. Anything could happen right now with De Vries, right? Especially if he puts up another good showing at Singapore, especially again versus Latifi, right? Like, Latifi is like the bottom of the barrel. So you know how the slowest driver is performing, so you've got something relative to work with, right? As opposed to something more nebulous like the drivers being on each other's level, and now you have to try and piece together what the car is doing for each driver. But anyway, so the Vries could go anywhere. Haas might opt out of the baby Schumacher experiment. They might wash their hands of this and say this is just not worth it. We could be getting more points with another more experienced driver in, or a better young driver in, and that would cover whatever discount they were getting on Ferrari power units, if there is a discount involved in this deal. Right, so a baby Schumacher, he might get ejected from Haas, and he, just as likely, could land anywhere. Right, there's a lot of teams that might be convinced by him at this point, and I assume that if Alfa Romeo do not get this money that they're waiting on from China in regards to Guan Yu Zhou and his contract, Ferrari might just usher him into that Alfa Romeo seat. That might happen. They just as likely could usher Antonio Giovinazzi back there. You see, the driver market's all over the place right now. So Alfa Romeo, they're waiting on Chinese money. So Zhou, he might get kicked out on account of that. Now, Bottas, he wants Zhou to stay because he's actually convinced by Zhou as a driver, right, as a teammate to play off of. He's actually convinced by him. So Bottas has let his opinions be heard on this. Colton Herta, he will not be getting the super license. So he will not be getting an F1 drive. Why will he not be getting the super license? Because one of the Indy Lights series he competed in either did not have enough cars in it to count for full super license points, or it had too many amateur drivers. I'm not sure how that falls. I'm pretty sure it didn't have enough cars in it to count for full super license points. It would be a very strange ruling to not have enough amateur drivers when a lot of drivers are. Anyway. So Colton Herta, he has to wait, another season to get his super license? Is what it is how the cookie crumbles. It would not have been... Well, you see, I suppose this is a marker that the new FIA is stricter with handing out super licenses. Because an older FIA would have totally fixed some sort of deal for Colton Herta. Bernie would have thrown some money down as lubrication, and and this deal would have happened, and this guy would have gotten a super license. Because the headlines, especially with going to Vegas in 2023, and here's this American rookie at the Vegas debut circuit. Oh my god, it would have been such news. It really would have been such news. Who knows? He might get the super license points somewhere halfway through the season, and then actually get a cameo drive at Vegas for all we know. But yeah, Colton Herta, I was excited for him coming in, and well, he's not coming in. I was keen on him coming in with anyone. It's going to be with AlphaTauri. It's not happening at all now. I suppose the other shot in the barrel would be with Andretti, but that depends on when Andretti actually managed to enter F1, if they managed to enter F1. Anyway, Gasly to Alpine. Right, this was talked about news. I'm not sure if it was before the Dutch Grand Prix or before the Italian Grand Prix. I think it was before the Dutch Grand Prix, but this was news, right? Gasly, he might have been going to Alpine. He might still be going to Alpine. I do believe Helmut Marko wants him to vacate that AlphaTauri seat. I'm pretty sure he wants that to happen ASAP so he can put Liam Lawson in there. And well, if Marko has everything his way, if Dr. Marko, right, he's not Dr. Marko. He's definitely Dr. Marko if he pulls this one off, give him supervillain status. If he manages to get Piastri into an AlphaTauri, then he might as well start wearing a Victor Von Doom mask or something at that point. If he manages to get Piastri into an AlphaTauri. But yeah, Piastri, believe it or not, he could allegedly still move. Now, I don't believe he could opt out of the McLaren deal at this point, but just as well, they've just been to this contracts court, and that might have been an observation said in private by the contracts court to to Piastri and his representative being Mark Webber. There might have been something that was said in private, like, you can actually still opt out of this McLaren contract and go somewhere else. So that sent the driver markets into another spin. Likewise, there's some F2 graduates looking to get into Formula One. Dragovic, he's won the GP2 title. He's won the Formula 2 title. So he can't race in Formula 2 now. He has to find an F1 seat or go WEC or IMSA. Who knows? IndyCar. Sky's the limit, but the F1 might not be in that sky. There's other F2 graduates looking to promote at this point. Duhan and Liam Lawson. And Duhan was, being talked about quite extensively over the weekend for the Italian Grand Prix. He was getting a lot of camera time. It was most fascinating, right? And he might be landing in the Alpine seat, Duhan. Lawson to AlphaTauri. And Dragovic, who knows? Right, Haas might be opening a seat for Dragovic, and they might recoup. Well, I wonder if it's possible to recoup any Russian. Anyway, I believe he's Brazilian, Dragovic. There'll be Brazilian petroleum money, Petrobras and all of that behind him. So I'm sure Haas are interested in cashing in on that if they can. Likewise, there's just some hot talents in Formula 2 all over the shop, really. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of teams who are looking to get rid of some stale drivers and bring in some fresh new talents. But just as well, some talents who still have some mileage in them. Kvyat, he could make a comeback. That's been a story that's been talked about. Likewise, Giovinazzi could make a comeback. That's been a story that's been talked about. Where might Kvyat make a comeback? I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea. Might be with Haas. Where might Giovinazzi make a comeback? Supposedly with Alfa Romeo if Guan Yu Zhou, if this Chinese money doesn't materialize. Right, so there's all these, it's musical chairs right now. There's 3 chairs and 20 men competing for the 3 chairs. So, where does Ricciardo go? He's not gonna make Vegas, I tell you what. Yeah, making Vegas. That was a jokey joke when that was mentioned, when that Grand Prix was brought up. When that was a jokey joke, you might really not make Vegas right now. It's looking tight. And there's no telling what Giovinazzi is gonna come back looking like after he's been ensconced in an elite third driver program. It's not telling what he might come back like. Likewise, Kvyat. So there's teams who will be willing to take a gamble on these guys. And Ricciardo, we've got the film on him. We've got all the film, right? Constant racing through all these years. The mercurial performance here or there does not make a season. So he's gonna find himself out of options probably quicker than anyone thinks. But right now the driver market's in a spin, and it could stop spinning by the time I post this video, and suddenly all seats are decided, right? And Piastri's contract is not up for grabs, and he's actually going to McLaren, and all of these things are set in stone for 2023. That could just as well happen. It's super bad. Like, I've never seen the driver market in this much of a spin, and and there's no there's no Ferrari seats up for grabs or what have you, like a top 2 team seat up for grabs. So this is quite a fascinating time right now for me. I'm gonna be very interested to see how everything falls. Anyway, that's the vid. Peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there, homie. Hey, let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop, cause you know I gotta win every day. Go! See, you really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go! You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything. anything about a boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that are always winning, and I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death, and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a rap, and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this, and I be banging on my chest, and I bang in the east, and I banging in the west, and I kinda give you more, and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street, and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it, and we all up in the race, and you know we gotta go now, try to keep up with the pace, and we struggling and hustling and set it, and I get it, and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it, and I gotta grab it, and I gotta cut all through this traffic just to be at the top of the dome. But I know I